The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, TechBytes is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
Welcome to another edition of TechBytes by the IFBTA. And today I'm really pleased to have a conversation with Tyler Marpes, who is the Vice President of Technology Operations at Scooters Coffee. So welcome to TechBytes.
Thanks, Rob. Super excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Well, we could have met in person earlier this week at the National Restaurant Show in Chicago, but we sort of ships it crossed in the aisle or something, right?
It certainly happens there. It's easy to get lost.
So before we get lost in the show, why don't we just start out? I'm not going to assume that everybody knows who Scooters is. And I do recall a few years ago, I actually did a webinar, might have been for Chart, that counts on hotel restaurant traders, and Scooters was on that, but it wasn't you. So give us a little background on Scooters, and then we'll get right into it and talk some technology and maybe have a coffee or something. I don't know.
Sounds great. Yeah, Scooters Coffee is a 28-year-old company now, 900 plus locations. We've had immense growth in the last 5 years. Based in Omaha, Nebraska, in 31 states as of today. So the growth journey has been one that's been very exciting. We find ourselves in the midst of the coffee and beverage wars right now. It seems to be quite the trend, not just with Scooters and Dutch Bros and Seven Brew, but even McDonald's launching dirty sodas, et cetera. So great brand position, incredible company culture. Proud to call it home.
Well, you weren't always calling Omaha, Nebraska home.
That is true.
You're a Pittsburgh guy.
Pittsburgh through and through. Do bleed black and gold. Live and die by Pittsburgh Steelers calendar. So
let's see. I'm from Philadelphia, so that might be. Let me think about that one for a minute. Okay, but I will say that I was friends with Franco Harris, and because Penn Stater, so that sort of gives me the Pittsburgh thing. I do know what Permane Brothers is. I know what Eaton Park is, so I must have some Pittsburgh, in there, right?
Well, if we get a Permane sandwich, a Smiley cookie, and an Iron City in the room, I think that's the Pittsburgh Holy Trinity. So
how about a Yingling?
That's the Iron City as well. So,
all right, so there you go. So we were both at the show. So why don't we just sort of start out there, because everybody looks at things sort of differently. So was there any highlights or anything that jumped out at you or that you weren't expecting, or what were you shopping for, or what were you doing there?
Yeah, this is my 9th or 10th National Restaurant Association show, only my second year brand side. Spent a lot of time working the booth in a past life, supplier side, but it's interesting for me, right? Being the one, everybody's looking for the R on the badge to find out who you are and what they can have a conversation with you about. As a technologist, obviously spending the majority of the time in the tech pavilion, but it's interesting to branch out. That's really what I'd like to look for there.
When you say majority of time in the tech pavilion, the way I see it is the whole show is the tech pavilion. I'm serious. Even on the other side with the equipment, if you include, the open kitchen stuff and even what Coke and Pepsi were showing with digital, you might as well have been the whole show. Robotics.
And that's what's really exciting for me as a technologist, right? Is that it's not just the North Hall anymore. Tech kind of shows up in every booth. So it's fun to get hands on kitchen equipment and things of that nature that my team typically doesn't work with, but pretty simple phrase for me. If it plugs into power or internet, it's probably technology. And there was a lot of that at the show. Wasn't really shopping for anything in particular. Some existing vendor conversations, and NRA for me has always been a pulse check, right? Where the industry is going, you can start to pick up on some trends there. I think if you didn't have the letters A and I on your booth this year, that was probably a miss. That seemed to be certainly the theme, rightly, wrongly, or indifferent.
We might debate that one, because I think that certainly was the theme last year. And while people had AI in their booth somewhere listed, it wasn't necessarily the headline, even though it's still a big topic. It seems like people are coming around and embedding it more in what they're doing. The message is more how they're using it this year than what you can do with it.
Yeah, I'd actually agree with you on that. It's nice to see that sort of sentiment shift. It's not just two letters in a marketing presentation or a roadmap deck anymore from vendors. It's sitting on top of real product with productivity in mind. My opinion on it is pretty simple. Is it's an excellent extension of the human experience. We just need to do it responsibly, right? If we've got 15 vendors, because restaurant tech's highly segmented, as much as we may try and find the all-in-one solution, big brands tend to look for best in class, and you end up with a distributed in-store architecture. Well, it's hard to sell an operator on 10 independent AI solutions that don't talk to one another, right?
That is so I sort of look at that as the next frontier there, because it seems like you have two types of AI that are going on, and I'm a user. I think I subscribe to four, which is sort of silly, but they each one have their strengths and weaknesses, and even within one, how you use it on the web, how you use it on your desktop, how you use it in chat, or voice, they're not together yet. They're siloed, right? So,
Right.
um, but I do see the culture. I see a culture clash going on in it where people are saying it should be embedded in our program, but other people are saying you don't need it in the application. You just should use it this way. So, you know, are you doing like trial by fire here and figuring that thing out? And where are you sort of thinking right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. For us, it's really about productivity. How do we allow our support center employees to provide better support to our franchise system? How do we allow our corporate office to maintain an asset light model? Right, we don't want to have that bloated experience, certainly, but more broadly than that, I think it's a great thought partner. I think it prompts creativity. Our philosophy is pretty simple. We need to have a human in the loop, really at every stage of the AI interaction, whether that's a corporate support center employee or even down to the franchisee level. But good AI practice for us starts with good data governance. And if you don't have good data governance, if you don't have a clean data warehousing or data laking policies in place, I don't believe that individual AI tools sitting on specific point solution products can do all of the things that they can and will do someday. A lot of us in the QSR space, we're still trying to figure out the data piece, right? We've all kind of got data everywhere, and I think the brands that are going to win with AI sooner are going to start with data governance.
Well, that's
Obviously,
sort of interesting because I agree with you on that. I typically, when I use the word AI, I'm really talking about, actionable information, or people will say actionable insights or whatever it's going to be. I do find that when I give it structured data that I've collected, or when I say to somebody, let me have your data, it does sometimes so quickly give you the insight and sees it a certain way. But if you're actually asking it to develop the data, it's very frustrating for me because the longer the chat goes, the more memory that you have to remind it of where you started and where you're going.
yeah,
And I'm constantly learning to catch the mistakes. You have to read carefully. You can't accept the way. But if you have structured data, I think you're onto that one. Then it seems to do a very good job with the structured piece. But it doesn't. It's not a It's sort of like you have these deja vu moments and you think of things. And I remember when people would be sold inventory and ordering systems, and they would be told how easy it is, it's going to do everything. Well, if your recipe cards weren't in place in the first place, then that's not going to do it for you, right? If you weren't organized. So the
right.
same thing.
Yeah, same principle apply, right? The more things change, the more they stay the same. And to your point about when you're providing an AI LLM with structured data, and for me it's context clues, right? We have the privilege of being in all the meetings. Today the AI doesn't. And so when we leave the meeting and we're looking for an actionable insight, or we're looking for an AI model to answer a question for us, it doesn't have the context of the conversation that we've just come from. And if you've not done enough to either provide it the contextual clues or to give it a data set that it's able to contextualize from, that's where I think we lead to hallucination. And to your point about memory retention, it's like, did we actually end up where we intended to go? That's the hard part.
The nice thing about talking out loud with somebody about this is all of a sudden, and I joke about this, you get the bubble above your head and you're like thinking about how, you're getting these ideas as you talk. So just gave me a thought because, I have Applaud, the card device. I do take that to meetings and I record them just to get the, well, just because I have a focus problem. So I got to get it later on and get it concise, right? However, I've started to say to people, let's go ahead and record all the meetings or the training sessions or whatever. I feed it in because it'll be more concise and pick out the bullet points and ask the questions. So why wouldn't you take something like Applaud or something in, or just open up a Zoom on the meeting and just record it and really take it into the meeting, anyway?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we're Zoom users at Scooters, and we're, I would say, maybe mid-stage adopters of the AI companion solution today. The challenge for us then just simply becomes a data exfiltration and more of a security question than a data governance question. Did someone in the room say something that pertains to a contract that wasn't signed, and then does another individual who was a part of that meeting or somebody from another team who doesn't know about that particular brand partnership or whatever the topic might be, have we accidentally leaked something? Not fear mongering, but more broadly for me, it's we just want to be incredibly responsible.
That was your AI, by the way, chiming in to let you know you were saying something you weren't supposed to say.
Certainly was. But for me, Rob, it's really more about just doing it responsibly. We want to make sure that we've got a strong, identity and access management posture where someone's not having access to information that was recorded in a Zoom AI companion session.
So wait. So conspiracy theory here. So how many times do you have this subject with your wife or your friends, and all of a sudden those ads are popping up like 6 hours later, right? So we know we're being listened to all the time. I don't care what somebody says. I know my phone is listening to me. It's probably going to bring up a Scooters ad like later on today, right? For me, even though I may not be near one, right now, but I think that we sort of forget how many things are out there. And one of the things I talk to people about is how much you can do with what you already have. Like, for instance, your security cameras, which are trained to pick up sound and motion, and they exist. We forget. So go look at all the stupid crooks who forget that there are all these cameras out there, right? Recording everything, and that's how they get caught. So aren't we fooling ourselves if we don't think that those conversations are already being captured anyway?
Yeah, I think they certainly are. For us, it's just more about, brand protection, both at the individual employee level, but then more broadly, the responsible deployment of AI really is just front and center for us as a business today. Not a reason to say no to it. We treat ourselves in the business of once and right. I'm happy to be a fast follower to some of the AI craze that's happening right now. There's always a news article, right? There's always a lawsuit happening, but we're getting closer to something that's real, both for us and really in the industry. That's what's exciting.
Well, I think that there's this opportunity, and there's certainly an opportunity for the IFBTA to do this. I've had this thought that, first of all, there is a little nuance that you said earlier. It's besides good data governance, it's also how you structure the conversation, how you ask the question. One of the issues we have in any industry vertical is that people don't know how to ask the question. And if they have learned how to ask the question, they don't share it with everybody else. Right. And so I'm screwing around with this idea of, all right, first of all, if you're in the restaurant industry, you know what a food cost is, you know what these things, even if you didn't go to school for it, you were taught it, you understand it. It's very hard to explain labor shifts, cross shifts and, multiple job time. So if we were to take that institutional knowledge and just come up with a central database and dictionary for it and start from there, the independent all the way up the thing, we'd be using the same terminology, but we're not. So I think that that's probably an opportunity.
I think that's a fantastic idea, right? It's the QSR dictionary, if you will. We need it. We joke about that internally in my team, is that tech becomes a foreign language to non-technical folks, right? There's a lot of acronyms in our business. We've got a responsibility to bring folks on the journey, but we've got to make sure we're talking the same language, and it's no different than whatever AI engine you decide to ask a question that day.
I wonder what would have happened. And, I'm now giving myself another idea is, there's a lot of trade shows in our industry and a lot of conversations. If I were to just get a lapel pin, like Applaud lapel pin, or I get something like that, and, let people know I'm recording, but I'm not really transcribing, I wonder what would happen if I spent a week at a trade show or meetings and then say, all right, what are the key words that were used? What were the definitions? Because even my conversation with you is going to use, certain terms and things I just take for granted, other people take for granted, but they could learn from both of us, in how we looked at the show, the nuances, what we're interested in, your perspective at 900 units, somebody should know that not in the coffee business, but somebody should know that in the 2 units, right? And we don't do that.
It's a great idea. I think the end result would be interesting, right? I think you'd have to filter through a lot of show floor promises that got made, right? Maybe some pricing deals that hadn't been approved.
No, I didn't say we're going to do pricing. But okay, I already know what my weekend assignment is. It's a holiday weekend. I think I have over 100 podcasts, and I think I might just go ahead and see what would happen if I put them all into something.
Yeah,
who knows?
It's a compelling use case, right? And that's where we find AI to be interesting for us, right? If you just think about Power BI or whatever front end analytic platform a brand uses, we live and die by a dashboard, and a dashboard always is a look back in time, right? So our most up to date historically, right, most up to date version of a dashboard is always a rear view mirror. Putting something that's more prompt based over top of that data set, allowing people to self-serve, be able to create themes both around product mix, loyalty, et cetera. That to me is where the story becomes increasingly compelling, answering the questions of why.
Well, let's just take a quick break because I'm actually going to challenge you on this last piece. So I'm warning you while we take the break. You're about to be challenged. So and you can challenge me back. So let's just take a fast break here, and we're going to come right back. And, I'm having a conversation with Tyler Marpes, who is the Vice President of Technology Operations at Scooters Coffee. And we will be right back after this break.
With the rapid expansion of technology in the food and beverage industries, finding the right supplier can become overwhelming and complicated. To simplify this process, the IFBTA created Exchange. Exchange is a powerful search tool where users can easily narrow down their technology search and refine results by application type, geography served, department, and more. Browse resources and learn more about the industry's technology suppliers at exchange.ifbta.org. Now, back to the show.
So welcome back, and I hope you had a good coffee break. And I'm with Tyler Marpes, who is the Vice President of Technology Operations at Scooters Coffee. And, we were talking right before the break about a number of different things, that are going on. And, you were talking about a dashboard being a look back. So I just want to make sure I understand that particular concept, because in any system that I've used, like a back office system, they ask for historical data, which I agree with you is looking backwards, but they also look at what's coming forward. And there's so many data points that are available to us coming forward, like what concerts, how the hotel levels are in town, what's the weather forecast going to be, and then you have the historical data and the trends, but you apply them to the going forward position, and we have a lot more information available to us, including what the competition is doing. How's the coffee market doing? I heard Technomic tell me that worldwide coffee is the biggest growing segment worldwide. So is it really a look back, especially if you're able to tie in these things that we never were able to tap into before to predict the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. And on the whole, I don't disagree with you that we have more data than we ever have, right? And more maybe predictive insights. I still think on the whole in our industry, data is broadly segmented. And there's a lot of work that data engineers and business intelligence folks do behind the scenes to give us whatever that front end dashboard is for the executive room. And by the time that dashboard makes it into a PowerPoint presentation and gets to the board meeting, it's a retrospective at that stage. That's really what I mean when I say look back, is that by the time the people who want to see that data take a look at it, someone's pulled that data, we've put it into a presentation, we've maybe amended it a few times, and it's as close to real time as real time can be in most brand cases, where I don't consider scooters unique maybe in that challenge. Where we want to go is the story that you talk about, right? Is pulling in all of those outside factors, right? The weather report that suggests that sales and traffic might be down this morning because the Omaha salt trucks didn't make it out in time for me to make it to my favorite Scooters drive-through. That's where we're not at yet. I think there are a few brands in the industry that have done some of that work early, but I still think we are early. I think it's first
The
quarter.
interesting thing about that, though, is I used weather as an example, but weather, especially in the retail industry, has been used for years. So what I always try to figure out is what is the stuff that we didn't know we had or we could be connected to that we never thought of. And that's usually what always surprises me. The weather they talk about, they talk about getting into other things, but cameras that are recording traffic in intersections, they're out there, right? You can see them. So there's a lot of stuff available to us that we just never thought to look for. And generally I find it by surprise. I'm not looking for it. So, you spent most of your career working, as you said, on the supplier side. And so the last couple of years you've been walking the show on the other side. So what is it like to make that transition from working from a supplier into being the operator? And I guess I might as well ask you, we don't have to say who you work for before, but was Scooters a customer, and is that how you figured it out?
Yeah, great question. Scooter was not a customer before. I actually did find out about the job at Scooters from being at National Restaurant Association show. However, the transition for me was quite easy in truth, from supplier to brand, and the show experience obviously is wildly different. I'm not standing in a booth for 12 hours a day on maybe not enough carpeting padding, depending on the marketing budget that year. But more broadly than that, right? It's nice to go from the selling to being sold to. It prompts more direct conversations around innovation, right? When you're supplier side, your product inside and out. You have a particular segment of customer that you're looking for at NRA or any show, and you kind of go that path. But NRA brand side, I get to spend time in the kitchen equipment section, and I get to spend time in Lakeside taking a look at what's happening in the food and beverage space.
Well, how many people from Scooters went with you?
Yeah, we had a pretty solid showing this year. I think there were about 8 or 9 of us out there.
Did you walk together as a team?
We actually didn't. We didn't have much overlap, unfortunately, but we had our supply chain team out there, members of our menu team. It's a great show for those groups to get out there and kind of explore and wonder and ideate around menu innovation. But also, you've got massive supply chain opportunities right now.
Did you get together each day and compare notes, or do you wait till you get home? Or how do you compare notes? Because if you weren't walking with some of your peers looking at kitchen equipment, you're going to look at it one way and you're going to see the digital screen on there, realize it communicates. They're going to look at it a different way. So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a lot of collating of notes and getting back into a meeting room here once we're back in Omaha. We didn't have the whole team out there for the whole time. I had the pleasure of being out there for the entire show. So I've got some detailed notes to debrief with, not just my supply chain and menu partners that were out there, but I think my friends in operations are going to be quite happy with what's taking place from a kitchen innovation perspective.
So what did you, let's not talk regular technology, but kitchen innovation or food. What did you see there that you really found interesting that you actually now might apply and look at differently as you look at the technology stack, that you're working with today and where you're going to go in the future?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll first start from a non-technical perspective.
You like the Wisconsin cheese booth?
Wisconsin cheese booth, right? Absolutely.
And the pretzels were right up there, right?
Right around the corner with the blue icy slush, certainly.
There you go. They put the little candies in those. I thought that was sort of interesting.
They did, yes. But packaging is one that, for some reason, every NRA, the last two I've been at a brand, is one that I'm always drawn to. Not a packaging expert, not even a marketer, but I kind of view packaging as a window into the brand soul a little bit, right? It's what the guest sees before the big reveal, right? It's what they hold in their hand. It's what the Instagram photo is taken through the lens of that cup, or through that little clamshell where your food's going to be at. So it's fun seeing packaging innovation, because it's just something I don't spend any time in. And from a kitchen perspective, it's just broadly that concept of a connected kitchen. That's what excites me, right? Not needing to do firmware updates on an espresso machine or on an oven profile with a USB stick per se, right? But treating that expensive piece of equipment like it is technology, and leveraging where other parts of the business have already gone.
I bet it was interesting, because your kitchen people and your procurement people who might be dealing with that probably never talked to, I mean, you're there a couple of years, but probably never talked to the IT people before. All of a sudden, they've got a digital device that can communicate, and now they got to come to you and talk to you about, okay, now I need this bandwidth, and how are we going to go do that? And,
Yeah, no one ever thinks to bring the network guy into the oven conversation, right?
Put the network guy in the oven. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah, but we don't think about that, right? You've got to have your network and your security team taking a look at these vendors, because what they're doing is both equally exciting, and for some of the people that work in those teams, maybe creates a little bit of heartburn. But at the end of the day, it's the right work, and that's what excites me. What excites us as a brand is, how do we make the life of a barista, a store manager, a franchisee just incrementally better? Because guest experience won't outweigh theirs, right? They're the window to the brand. They're the voice, and anything we can do to reduce complexity, and that starts with the equipment they interact with every day, which is espresso and ovens.
So I think by the way, you've cued into a subject that I've talked to a lot of people about as they speak about labor, and they speak about, and I don't want to continue really down the AI path, but they always worry about taking labor. I don't look at it that way. But how do you believe that you can, in fact, make the life of the barista, the person who's working the line and communicating with the guest, how do you make their life easy? How do you not over tech it? And how do you keep the culture of the business in there while you're doing all that, and, not having, it taken away from you, but, training the people to work with that?
It's the question that we ponder as technologists and cross-functional partners every day. I mean, I'll start with the simple one. Technology breaks. When it breaks, it shouldn't be a 5-alarm fire for a barista. We shouldn't be asking them to act as level 1 triage, right? So we have to build a store that's redundant, that's resilient, the same way our baristas are resilient. We want them to focus on the guest, not on the support call. The second way for us is training, right? How do we get more accurate information from a training perspective into a barista's hands sooner? And how do we get training to exist, not just as maybe I treated my homework in middle school of, hey, it's done, I've turned it in, but reading and learning to comprehension. Beverages are complex, right?
I don't think people know how complex they are. They used to say pizza was, but in reality, by the time you get involved with syrups, and you get involved with different types of milk, and you get involved with how you're making it, I don't even know what the number of combinations, or maybe you do. I could use AI to go figure that out. But how many different combinations there would be if you take the number? If I wonder if I took a picture like of the barista bar there, how many different combinations I could come up with.
Right, and it's certainly in the thousands without batting an eye, right? And then you're talking about training a barista based on a recipe, right? Well, it's rare that a customer orders just based on the recipe, because I like oat milk, but somebody else likes almond milk. But then, well, I need half sweet, I need half syrup.
Extra hot,
light ice, no ice, some ice.
No room.
No room, right? It's complex, and we train based on what worked in the lab, and Again, not a menu person, not a marketing person, but even as a technologist, I challenge my team, right? Everything works in the lab. Put it in the hands of 19,000 baristas in the field, and they'll tell you if you struck gold or not pretty quickly. And it's the same with menu innovation and how we treat recipe and training. And more broadly than that, there is a lot of what I don't want to classify as mundane, but there are a lot of task-based items that an in-store associate is asked to do, right? Our inventory count's extremely manual. Yes. Can we reduce the amount of time that a barista or shift lead is spending on inventory? We certainly can. And we should be focused on that, because if I can get a barista 15 minutes back, smiling at a guest in line, making sure that they're downloading the Scooters Coffee mobile app, ordering their favorite drink, we know they've got a dog in the car that gets a pup cup, that's differentiated experience. But that's really hard to do if the barista's on a support call, counting how many sleeves of cups
That's
showed
true.
up that day, and maybe the store is understaffed that afternoon because somebody
But you know what? If you think about it, so I don't know if you've ever bartended.
I'm not.
Maybe it's a hobby. You know how to do the Iron City, so I get that. Okay, so we do that, but I'm not a bartender. I've been a barista, but I'm not a bartender. And it's when you think about it, the biggest complaint you have about your bartenders is not measuring and not pouring properly. At least as a barista, you are having measured drinks and you're pouring properly. So at least those counts are there. But you do have a lot of other things that you're doing as well. And you're communicating with the guest and you're communicating with the other people. And it's really and it's, by the way, not one person, it's a line, and so it's a little bit different in that. And it's just a very difficult, position to go in. So making their life easier, but also not taking away the communication is like a key thing.
Yeah, it's a complex challenge. It's one that's not new to the industry, but we'll use a music example here, right? 6 strings on a guitar. If all 6 are in tune, it sounds great. If even one of them's a little off key, the chord's broken. And that's how we have to treat the engine of our restaurants. Is that it's not just that store managers and shift leads are trained to a high caliber, but it's the person who started last week. Mm-hmm. How do we make a barista effective from day one? Right? That's a huge challenge. Point of sale interfaces may be more complex than they should be because they were developed by a tech guy sitting in my lab, right? Who it worked for them because
nobody ever understood what the online ordering would do if you weren't going to increase the number of machines and you don't have some sort of throttling in there. You're going to have more people expecting it quicker and getting in the front of the line, right, by ordering. So they don't think that way.
They certainly don't, and it's easy for me as a technologist to only think about the tech. Is the point of sale working? Does KDS do what I need it to do? Essentially, hey, it works and there's uptime and it's secure. But there's operational and training considerations, right. And have we effectively collaborated in that journey of whatever new tech might look like? We can very easily.
Did you have to go and train? Did they make you go in a store and train?
I did, and I found out I'm a terrible barista, Rob.
What's your favorite drink?
Triple espresso, because I only had to push one button. I made it perfectly every time. It's what I drink every day at Scooters. But I learned that I was not cut out for being a frontline barista.
And you know what? You better be quick, and you better not lose your cool, because when those orders stack up, people get pissed, especially if they're coming and picking out, right? So it's a real challenge. So. Your impressions, we're almost halfway through the year. So this is the time of the year. Let's see. So you'll have FS Tech in the fall. You had Mertech, you had the NRA show. You've had some other things there's a coffee show too, but you've had a number of different things that have gone on. So as you start thinking about the second half of the year, what are your priorities and what do you believe are going to be the hot technologies that are going to take us second half of the year, but really be what we're talking about going into next year?
Yeah, it's awesome. I'll start first from a me at Scooters perspective. Focus for us in the second half of the year is about making sure that we've got roadmap from a technology perspective that supports the continued growth of this brand, that there are systems, tools, and processes in place to support a growing business as we approach 1,000 stores here very quickly. right sizing tech stacks, making sure that support is good and available and responsive. The simple things, keep the main stuff. The main stuff continues to be the theme for us, while wanting to sit somewhere between leading edge and bleeding edge on some innovation. As an industry, second half of the year, what I'm looking for is all the things that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. I'm really interested in the brands that are responsibly, efficiently, and effectively deploying AI solutions that provide time back either to my corporate support center team or to a franchisee, a store manager, shift leader, even down to the barista level. Not to talk about another coffee chain too much, but the Green Dot program deployed by Starbucks is a fantastic solution, putting a trainer in every barista's ear, right? Order accuracy is still the number one metric for a guest today in a QSR environment. We can be as fast as we want, but if you've ordered a hot coffee and I give you a cup of tea in 30 seconds, it maybe was fast, but you might not be coming back.
Well, that's true. So just because I should ask this question, so what is in your personal tech stack that you are looking to do, let's say in the next 6 months? Is there something, if you take time off in the summer, is there something that you're going to be just screwing around with or you're interested in learning more about for yourself personally, your family?
Yeah, I spend, like you, I've got 4 or 5 AI subscriptions today, just continuing to tinker around with Claude. That's kind of the passion project for me, both in personal workflows, but figuring out creative ways that we can bring that into the corporate tenant. I do a really bad job bleeding the line between work-life balance, the always-on mode. So even when I'm tinkering for fun with tech,
Right.
it ends up leading to a conversation or a thought at 2 a.m. I wake up and I go, I got to write that down because it's going to be important for a meeting.
Yeah, I got a whole family. I got my lawyer, Claude. I got my accountant, Claude. I don't have my wife, Claude, but that could come sooner or later. She better not hear this, right? We'll keep that between us. But, it's funny because I have tested all the different ones. And even from the vendor side, I'm finding some work better than others. It's all about the integrations. But Claude seems to be where I'm ending up for business things. And then on personal things, if you're in a Microsoft world, it's probably going to be Copilot. And if you're in, the Android world or Google, you'll end up with Gemini. And it's just a matter of time that we're going to see these things starting to come. I was talking to somebody about, we'll see them to come together, just like when the early days of delivery ordering, you had 10 tablets there, and now you go to one, right? So sooner or later, we're going to get there.
We certainly will, and it's an exciting journey to be on, both personally as someone who's just intrigued, but professionally as well. Not just because there's so many options out there, but because it is a persistent challenge. It's moving faster than most of us can learn. I like unattainable goals, and so sort of mastering where AI is going is proving to be one of those slightly unattainable goals.
And finding ways of workaround when it can't figure it out itself.
Certainly.
Let's try it this way. Well, look, I could see we could actually compare notes on that. We probably should the next time we get together. But, it's been great having this small snippet of time. And sorry we didn't get to meet in person in Chicago. But, I appreciate your joining me on TechBytes.
Thanks for having me, Rob. It was an absolute pleasure. And next time we'll do it in person.
We will do that. So, again, I've had my conversation guest today, Tyler Marpes. I knew I would do that, right? Tyler, that's pretty funny. Now I'll have to tell them that they got to cut that one. So it's been a pleasure having a conversation today with Tyler Marpes, and who is the Vice President of Technology Operations at Scooters Coffee. And we'll have to have a coffee together sometime and continue that conversation, because some of the best conversations I've had have actually been in a coffee shop over coffee. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
This podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of food service, hospitality, and retail technology, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, The Exchange, an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share. And share in conversations like the one we're having today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of TechBytes, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to taking our next bite of technology together.